Hello and welcome to CGTN special program on the 75th anniversary of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. We will take you to explore the mission of China's top political advisory body, as well as its functions, aspirations, and achievements so far.
Well, I'm Hona. Joining our special program today, we have Dr. Jiaqing Guo, member of the CPPCC Standing Committee and professor of International Relations at Peking University, and Vivian Jian. Well, she is a CPPCC member and Deloitte China chair, and very own Sean Calebs. He is the anchor of CGTN America, who's been following this year's two sessions here in the studio.
We also have Dr. Xia Lu, Associate Professor at the School of Marxism Studies at Renmin University of China, Senior Fellow at the Taihe Institute, and Political and Economic Commentator Einar Tengen. Welcome to our program, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome. Well, this morning, the CPPCC wrapped up its annual session at the Great Hall of the People here in Beijing. Over the past week, more than 2,000 national political advisors from all walks of life gathered to discuss topics regarding China's development.
And for more, let's check in with CGTN reporter Huang Fei, who has been following the event for us since day one. Huang Fei, good evening to you. Fill us in on today's closing meeting.
Yes, this morning, according to the chairman of the 14th CPPCC National Committee, Mr. Wang Huning, the CPPCC will advance Chinese modernization with, quote, high-quality advice. The political body, advisory body, will closely align with the Central Committee of the Communist Party and the strategic needs of the nation. They must address significant practical issues in development through consultations and deliberation. And he also encouraged members to delve into frontline research to make their suggestions and proposals more targeted. Now, 5,000 proposals were submitted since February, and half of them, or nearly half of them, are about the Chinese economy. And this is about building modern industrial system, as well as market reform and promoting a higher level of opening up.
Well, Huang Fei, briefly walk us through the CPPCC's role and its annual session this year. What are some topics or members' proposals that impressed you most?
Yes, well, the CPPCC is a united front of various political and social forces, and this year there are many proposals, as I said, 5,000 proposals, and there are several themes running through these discussions, and one of them, I'm sure, the keywords that you've heard many times is new quality productive forces. One member that I spoke to earlier this week said that he dedicated 3 of his 5 proposals to building new quality productive forces. He said, although China has made big strides in industrial robots, the application scenarios remain on the lower end and the medium end, and he says that China should continue to build a stronger supply chain and really nurture not just big companies but specifically more smaller companies that are in very niche areas. Another theme that we hear a lot this week is skilled talent and jobs. About 1,500 proposals are about employment. Specifically, China wants to create another 12 million new urban jobs this year. Officials have definitely highlighted a shortage of skilled labor, and so we heard a proposal yesterday to build a high-level team of industrial talent, industrial workers. These are, people vital to China's efforts to, again, modernize its industries, and the efforts will include promoting lifelong vocational training, as well as creating a more merit-based salary system to really incentivize these people to serve the strategic sectors of China's economy. We also heard a lot of proposals from Hong Kong and Macau, members of the CPPCC, advocating for deeper integration in the Greater Bay Area. Some members told me that they are advocating for streamlined travel permits for mainland travelers, and as well as to a proposal to raise the duty-free allowance of mainland visitors to Hong Kong from 5,000 yuan to 30,000 yuan. Very specific proposals, as well as another proposal to lengthen the loan period of Chinese art exhibits, mainland art exhibits to the city, so that it'll gain more impact. Now, notably, finally, we have a new category this year, and that is environment and resources. This is a major adjustment since the economic category was added to the CPPCC National Committee almost 30 years ago. So you can see that there is emphasis paid to this sector. About 85 committee members on the CPPCC National Committee.
We're a little pressed for time, so I'm going to have to leave you there.
About environment.
All right, appreciate that review from CGTN reporter Huang Fei on the ground in Beijing. Thank you so much. Let's get some analysis underway with our panelists, beginning with our guests here in the studio. Sean, we're so happy to have you here in Beijing as part of the CGTN team reporting on the two sessions. Look, this is a very different political system from the one in the U.S., which is often marked and sometimes held back by partisan divide here. Let me pick your brain first on how the CPPCC works in your eyes.
You know, that's a great question. I'm not an expert on the CPPCC, and I think if I spent 5 years every day studying it, I still wouldn't be. But I will say I know a lot more than most people in the United States simply because I know something about it. It's a sad thing to me that many people in the United States have not educated themselves on the way China's government works, because I think it is fascinating and it does offer insight into where China is now and where it's going and how it has this mechanism to move forward. I think if you talk to most people in the United States, they would look at two sessions and they use two words: rubber stamp. And I don't think that's fair, because if you think about what the CPPCC does, it represents people in all corners of China, teachers, farmers, virtually everybody, and they can bring these proposals that we just heard spelled out to individuals, and they discuss this throughout the year. So it's not like these things magically appear and a rubber stamp. They're vetted, they're discussed, and they move forward on these. And 8 days ago, when the national delegation of the CPPCC held its news conference ahead of the formal opening of two sessions, we got the first look into this effort for modernization, the fact that China wants to move forward and create higher quality items. And these days of massive manufacturing, where China was the economic engine for the world, that's going to be pared back, and it's going to be not only made in China, but created and engineered in China. And all this is spelled out. And you may hear a lot of people in the United States say, well, the CPPCC just does the bidding of the party. I would argue, is that any different from Republicans or Democrats? All the legislation that goes on Capitol Hill really comes through what those two entities, the two major political parties.
Well, exactly as Sean mentioned, the CPPCC represents a wide variety of the society. Well, Vivian, you're from the economic front. So as an CPPCC member, tell us about your proposal this year. How did you come up with it? And what does the process look like?
Yeah, I'm from the professional services industry. So many of the topics I will be focusing on looking at really is around how to continue to improve the doing business environment so that we could operate in a very competitive landscape. How do we continue to improve our innovation systems to actually generate more powers to fuel into the economic growth, and about the green transformation. So this year I brought forward a few proposals, one of which is around how to really to increase the efficiency of our innovation system, to bring the idea from the labs to the manufacturing plants, and eventually to really the work products of who will use in the consumer market, so that to generate more sort of growth powers for our economies. And the way that we come up with those proposals is through really a lot of studies and researches, by talking to customers and clients and companies, and to hopefully to bring the pain points of trying to resolve those issues and bring those tables for the government to hear and for them to consider.
A vivid and telling example from Vivian, and to echo what Sean said just now, these proposals seek to address problems. They don't just sing praise of what we have achieved here. Let's also turn to Dr. Jia here joining us via Skype. Dr. Jia, the CPPCC has approved the work report submitted by its standing committee. You are a member of the standing committee yourself. We want to get a little bit more from an insider point of view from you, Dr. Jia. Talk to us about the work that has been carried out this year during the two sessions.
Sure, thank you. I think the standing committee of the CPPCC National Committee has done a lot of work during the past year. according to the report, and also I experienced part of it. First of all, it has conducted a lot of field studies and organizing various kinds of trips to different parts of the country to study various aspects of the policy issues, like environment, economy, private enterprises, and all kinds of issues. And then they come up with research proposals to the government and policy proposals to the government. And also they organize various kinds of sessions, we call consultative sessions, for between CPPCC members and also government officials. And they sit together and talk about policy issues of a given area. And also they encourage people to come up with proposals on their own. That's not during the two sessions. That's between the two sessions. So the CPPCC Standing Committee has done a lot of work during the past year.
Dr. Jiao, we appreciate that, Hona. So as we heard from our guests here, it's not just work during the two sessions. It's year-long work, and you don't just sit at your desk and come up with a proposal. Exactly. You have to go through research tours, study sessions, consultative study groups in order to make your proposal available. They also talk to you about the members' corridor, which is a fine tradition that has been carried on since 2018 in order to make the proceedings more apparent, more engaging. We have the members face members of the press during the corridor and answer their questions and their concerns. What do you think this tradition has achieved?
Well, if you have ever been to the members' corridor or the ministers' corridor, it's literally battlefield for media journalists to fight for the best position, to have the best chance to have a conversation with either the MPC deputy or the CPPCC members or the ministers. Well, I think one of the important mission of CPPCC members, although their proposals are not legally binding, but they do have a way to influence China's legislation. In China, we have this consultative conference which aims for the CPPCC members to sit together and making a consensus. I think consensus is pretty important here, that their consensus can be brought to China's legislative body. In this way, they can influence China's legislation. And after their proposals have got feedback from the MPC Standing Committee, and they can pass the feedbacks to the grassroots people because they came from the grassroots.
Yeah, they come from the grassroots level and they get feedback, the grassroots level gets feedback on whether these proposals have a bearing on policy making and on legislation. And also on our special program today, topics discussed by the advisors have ranged from the economy to technology and education, with terms and phrases like new quality productive forces and artificial intelligence dominating discussions this year. Here's what some of them told us.
2024年的这个经济增长的目标是科学求实，积极可行，经过努力可以实现的目标。
技术创新，我们能见围绕我们的定位功能，还是围绕着新能源系统、新电力系统两大系统的构建，来布置我们的新质生产力。我们这几年从事的一体化的新能源的规划湿地建设，接近5000万千瓦，大概是前几年总和的4倍还要多。
我想呢，在这些技术创新方面，无疑美国走在了中国的前面，但是在这些技术的应用方面，中国一点都不落后。那么我们把人工智能呢，更多的和实体经济和细分领域去结合。
Policymakers need to know the concerns of private businesses better, and when policymakers make some policy decision, they should communicate the intention of the policies better to the private business.
对于我来说，也将立足本职岗位，与时俱进，为提升青少年科普教育质量建言献策。 当好航天梦想的播种人。
特别希望能够更多的帮助到我们的年轻的女性，能够在这个就是我们科教融合、科教兴国这样的大战略之下就更好的为国家做贡献。
我今年带去的提案的话呢，还是关于非遗保护传承的提案。提案的内容主要今年是涉及就是将非遗充分融入学校美育课堂体系的提案。
All right, for more analysis, let's get to Vivian. Well, Vivian, the government work report has set the 2024 economic growth target of around 5%. Well, you are a business elite, so how do you understand the rate of around 5%, as the number in 2023 was 5.2%? That number was significantly higher than the US 2.5% and Eurozone 0.5% and Japan 1.9%.
Yeah.
What do you think would be the main drivers to achieve that goal?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say that 2023 is a year where I think the government scorecard is quite solid. 5.2% has a lot of merits into it. And looking into the future, I think this market presents countless opportunities. We have the second largest digital economy with digital consumers' connections to really produce more possibilities of products. And also there's a lot of transformation that will be happening for traditional business to be digitalized, to be high value, and to be high efficiency. And there's also the green economy, where you will see really the energy transformation. And many of the new technology may not be even be invented. So, we can see countless opportunities. And there's also in the healthcare industries, there's also in the financial industry. So there's many opportunities and possibilities for all types of companies to look at this market. And there's countless potentials.
And an innovation-driven economy is definitely one of the priorities of the government in the year ahead.
And Hona, such broad representation from participants to the two sessions. We're talking about, managers, grassroots people, engineers, people that work really on the front line of their respective fields here. And each year during the two sessions, we introduce new terms and new concepts to our audiences. One of them being new quality productive forces this year, quite a buzzword, referring to technological and scientific breakthroughs with which China is pushing forward its emerging industries. That's very much future-oriented here. So Professor Xia, let's bring you into the discussion here. Help us understand what this concept entails and what developments can we expect as we build on the meanings from this concept.
Well, thank you very much for the question. I'm glad to join the discussion from next door. This new quality productive forces actually is a new term, but actually the meaning or the essence of this term is not new. Actually, the Chinese government or the Chinese leadership has been doing this kind of essential kind of policies or initiative or other kind of programs ever since 2012. And back in 2012, actually China has already initiated a state-led innovation. State-led innovative system in order to boom the kind of the field of innovation, particularly scientific technology. So if I were kind of given a definition or a kind of understanding of the new quality productive forces, I think there are two key words or two key aspects. The first key aspect is the people or the talented people and innovative people who could pursue, who could further the development of science technology and even the application of the science and technology to the different industries. That's the first one. The second key aspect of the new quality productive force is innovation. And the way to organize, not necessarily the way to produce product, and also the way to organize this kind of production. Well, I could still use a very good example for us to understand the real meaning of the new quality productive forces. Well, almost 70 years ago, in 1954, 1955, Professor Qian Xuesen, when he returned from the US back to China, he actually wrote a letter to Chairman Mao back then, because back then China wanted to, to do the missile and also also the atomic bomb, that kind of nuclear bomb. So Mr. Chen Xuesen suggested to Chairman Mao that China might be kind of in a disadvantaged way compared to other countries, but the way to organize this kind of production, the way to organize the scientific production and scientific research, it could be innovative. So this way to organize and to manage it is also a key component to the new quality productive force.
Well, artificial intelligence is also one of the key words during the two sessions. AI is also a new frontier that could reshape several industries. For more insights, I would like to go to Einer Tangen there in Beijing. Hello there, Einer. What do you think, well, China's main priorities in developing an AI industry? As we have heard, there are many reports, like the report from the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, over and over again. Well, it said it has to increase legislation to regulate the artificial industry. What would you think will be the main focus?
Well, there has to be standards. China has its own approach. It's trying to enlist other countries. It's going to be very, very difficult unless the whole world comes together on a set of standards. When you talk about AI, there's a lot of hype that's going on. They think, oh, it's going to replace humans or all this stuff. It doesn't. It's a tool. But it has a lot of potential negative sides, as we've seen. It's very hard to know what you're looking at is real, whether it's pictures or words. It can appear, somebody could appear to be speaking, but it's just a deep fake. And there's issues with information and the flow of it. What is real? What is being generated by AI? So the Chinese government is saying, look, this has to be regulated by governments. It's a responsibility. People have to know the information they're getting is true or not. Playing, entertainment, that's a separate issue. So they're going forward with this idea that they have to have a set of regulations that make sure that people are safe and that AI can be used in a positive manner.
Einer, appreciate that. Let's turn to Sean now in the studio. Sean, we've talked about many keywords and buzzwords here. Another one is international exchanges. I guess, with outsiders looking in on China right now, they're looking for clues about China's commitment to stay open to the rest of the world, and China calls it high-level opening up and high-quality opening up. What are some of the clues you have picked up from the two sessions? I mean, China, of course, has emphasized this on many occasions beyond just its annual political season.
Yeah, good point. I've been coming to China for now 14 years, a number of trips over those years. It has changed a great deal. I think we got the first peek at that back at the end of the year at APEC in San Francisco, and President Xi was there. There was a business dinner, and it was the hottest ticket in town. Every business member wanted to get in there, so the possibility of having face-to-face time with government leaders, because they want to come here and do business. Specifically, at two sessions, we heard Vivian talk about green economy and healthcare. They made it clear they're going to knock down barriers, all barriers in manufacturing, and significant barriers in terms of telecom and healthcare. That's going to be very important moving forward. Secondly, making it easier for people like me to come to the United States. Come to China, rather. They're going to be able to use WeChat. They can now put money on their phones that they couldn't do in the past. They want to open up China so people can come here, get educated, can travel, and that, I think, is going to have a big impact. We hear a lot about people-to-people relations. I don't think you can overstate how important that is. That's how you knock down barriers. So this openness, I think, is going to be embraced to a large degree by the outside.
I mean, when you have these specific measures on the ground encouraging international exchanges and the entry of foreign nationals into China for purposes of education, tourism, and business, that's how you inject that very much needed dose of confidence to people watching. We also have visa-free exemption policies coming into force for so many ASEAN countries as well. Absolutely, and you're watching our special program on the 75th anniversary of the CPPCC. We'll be right back after this.
It's China's political season as NPC delegates and CPPCC members gather in Beijing.
How to better govern the country and what is China's growth target?
Where are the new productive forces?
And what is the way to a better life?
We asked lawmakers and political advisors to answer key questions.
Follow the two sessions coverage on CGTN to understand China's agenda.
The CPPCC National Committee, the 14th since the first session 75 years ago. Each national committee is elected for a 5-year term. Its members represent a broad range of society. The committee consists of more than 2,000 members. They're divided into 34 groups based on political party or social sector. And these groups include China's 8 other political parties, which are organizationally independent of the Communist Party. Each of China's 56 ethnic groups is also represented. Our Li Jiao explains.
Now, unlike the NPC deputies or lawmakers of this country who are elected from China's 1.4 billion population, those advisors are actually selected from different sectors, including technology, sports, education, among many others. They actually added a new sector just last year, and it's called environment and resource.
其实充分体现了就是现在整个国家的决策对环境资源的这种关注。
Let's walk and talk. Let me get into the hall. Anyway, so a lot of people may wonder, do the political advisors have to be CPC members to attend the gathering? The answer is no. Actually, non-CPC members account for 61% of the group. So some of them may be from other political parties or have no party affiliation.
政协是我们国家一个非常特别的一个叫体制了。
团结各个党派各界群众的这么一个凝聚共识，充分讨论交流的这么一个平台。
民主党派的加入能够更凝聚共识，然后凝聚民心。
是工党这次来政协的人多吗？
挺多的，对，我们有30来位。
Also, there are many advisors whom you can just tell they are ethnic minorities. They are all dressed in their beautiful costumes.
是什么族的呀？我是畲族的。边疆的黑衣壮族。京族。
我是保安族，我们主要是以这个绣花为主。
Now, another trait of this group is that they are all highly educated people. Over 2,000 members, or 94% of the group, actually hold a bachelor's degree or above.
我是96年就博士毕业了，因为我是个医生的同时呢，又同时是个教育工作者。那我们在平时的工作，一方面看病，比方说你要知道老百姓的，比方说价格啊、费用啊，怎么样找到最好的医疗方式啊。所以这次我提案里面最关注的一个是国家区域医疗中心建设的问题。
So essentially, this is a gathering where thoughts, personal experience, suggestions from these political advisors will be taken notes and be listened and be polled.
Ding Mei, a political advisor in North China's Tianjin city, has dedicated the past 7 years to learning about how to improve the country's healthcare system.
Her suggestions focus on the possible response to an aging population. Our Huang Yue looks into how she performs her duty.
China is experiencing a profound demographic shift as its population ages rapidly. It's estimated that by 2035, 30% of the country's total population will turn 60 years and above. Therefore, improving services for the elderly people has become an increasingly important issue in recent years.
CPPCC member Ding Mei is on a tight schedule these days, visiting hospitals to learn about infrastructure and equipment and talking to medical workers and senior patients. The goal of her field research is to gather information and suggestions about improving healthcare services for older patients, which she will deliver at this year's 2 sessions. The first thing she focuses on, how to make hospitals more senior-friendly.
就是因为你今天再建医院，你就要想到你未来服务的人群，一大半以上是老年人。
You have to understand that in the future, over half of the patients will be seniors. The newly built hospitals should take that into consideration at the very beginning of their designs, and the old hospitals should adjust as early as possible.
Digital equipment is developing rapidly, and seniors often feel lost when trying to register for appointments and other hospital services online.
挂号平台的整合，能不能在一个平台上？
Instead of each hospital having its own registration app, I suggest there should be one integrated platform in each city for patients to register at whatever hospital they want to go to. The user interface should be simple and clear, the characters larger, and the voiceover function added.
Ding says there's still a long way to go for China to strengthen research into geriatrics. But making it easier for seniors to access medical treatment is something hospitals can do little by little.
就比如说我们原来都是先选哪个医院，再选哪个科。
Normally, when we register, we choose a department first, but many seniors don't understand which department they have to go to. They could just have headaches or feel dizzy. If we change the system and let them choose their symptoms, that would be a lot easier.
Ding says every family has seniors in it, and everyone eventually ages. She believes the efforts people put into senior care today will become a reward they eventually reap, securing a hopeful future for generations to come. Hong Yue, CGTN, Tianjin.
Let's continue our discussion with our panelists here on our special program. Dr. Jiao, I think it's so important. You mentioned just now in your answer that your work goes beyond the course of the 2 sessions. It's actually year-long work, and you and your fellow members participate in a wide range of research activities in order to put together proposals that best reflect the problems and concerns in your respective fields. Talk to us about how you carry out your duty on a normal basis.
Well, first of all, we attend various meetings organized by the CPPCC National Committee, especially the Standing Committee. And also, there are different specialized committees like education, agriculture, and foreign affairs, and they organize various kinds of meetings too. And then you have meetings organized by on specific topics, sort of consultation meetings with officials on a given topic. So if you are in that topic, you may be interested and then try to join that discussion. So, and of course, you talk with people, you experience various kinds of things. You pay attention to certain issues, and you come up with. You are not satisfied with a given policy, and then you come up with you study the issue, and then you come up with a proposal, and you can register that proposal or send in that proposal anytime during the year, and you can also join this. You may be invited to join one of the many study groups, which goes around the country. To investigate on specific issues, and then collectively we'll come up with some ideas with regard to certain policy, how to improve on it. So you can be busy if you take up all these.
Well, as Dr. Jia mentioned, there are many study groups and research teams. Well, actually, you've been working all year long apart from taking part in the annual session. So, Vivian, well, you're from the sector of non-CPC parties. Tell us what you do daily to get opinions and suggestions from the grassroots. How do you monitor the country's development in the eyes of the CPPCC member?
Yeah, I think we, as Dr. Jia was saying, we have many formats to participate in the CPPCC work. For example, the consultative meetings takes a lot of different forms and shapes. For example, you can work together with your members to make sure that the members with a common interest were working to one study group. I'm from the professional service industry, so for last year, I spent a lot of time working on the continue to improve the doing business environment so that company could feel they're easy to do business and to reduce their compliance costs. So I'm in part of that topics. So I get to be invited into different government meetings, and the consultative meetings also may include the government, include experts, and also include companies that we want to hear directly from the companies. And I also participate in 2 field research tours that we are actually going to 3 provinces to talk to the management teams of those companies. So with all those studies, you continue to understand the pain points of how when those companies apply the rules and what are the difficult element to it, how to continue to improve that, and then we summarize those. And then before you submit, you may also have an opportunity to work to talk with the government agencies that's responsible for those topics, and they can understand. They can tell you some, because we may not understand some of the elements that's working or not. Then you can they can give you viewpoints for us to refine our proposals. So when we submit those proposals, hopefully they are very much targeted and they are very much fact-based and very much easier for the government to look at to hopefully help them to their work to continue to improve.
Well, it's vital to achieve a consensus before you submit your proposals to the legislative making body.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's a very time-consuming process. That's exactly how you build and foster that very important consensus and unity within the CPPCC. Professor Xiaolu, let me talk to you now. I have a question about the representation here, because if you listen to what Vivian and what Dr. Jia have said just now in their answers, one key word is collective wisdom. There's a lot of collective problem finding. There's a lot of collective problem solving here. And Sean touched upon this also just now. You know, these CPPCC members, they have their own full-time jobs. They're educators, engineers, farmers, workers, doctors. How important, Professor Xia, is this diverse representation when it comes to fostering consensus towards future policy making here?
Well, thank you very much for the question. The key word you just mentioned, the collective wisdom, is very important. And I would like to raise another key word to represent the real function of the CPPCC, and that key word is consensus, or to build a consensus. Actually, a contrast to some Western countries, their legislature or their advisory body, well, we could observe that there are a lot of disagreement going on. There are a lot of, let's say, vetoes. There are a lot of, let's say, disagreement, and I don't agree with you, but I don't propose anything. I just disagree with you for the sake of disagree. So it is typical, let's say, what happened in the political or the politics arena. However, in China, particularly in CPPCC, well, just now we've heard Mr. Jia and Ms. Zhang mention that their job in the CPPCC is kind of daily running. Actually, their job is to improve, is to, let's say, help the administration to improve the policy making, and also the policy implementation, and also the institutional designing. For example, just now we heard about Tianjin's kind of Dr. Ding Mei about her suggestion about the hospital designing. Well, that is very kind of useful, and that is very practical, not necessary to daily running about the government issue, but also about the people's daily life. So, in my opinion, the CPPCC is not only about a platform or arena for members from all walks of life to represent their own sector. They are actually performing a way to improve this country as a whole, to improve the quality of governance, the quality of development, the quality of daily life as a whole. So I think this is the key contribution function of the CPPCC.
China's unique political consultative conference. I want to get more perspective from Sean. Well, Sean, you've been to the meetings. I believe you've been to the group discussions held by the CPPCC members and MPC deputies, different from the Western style parliament of fighting and debates. Well, in China, we sit together and making a consensus. How do you make of China's advisory body and the Chinese style party consultation?
Well, I want to go back to what our colleagues talked about, the building a consensus, because I think that's very important. This is something that begins months and months and months before two sessions ever happens. And these specialized committees, especially when you talk about something like the environment. In the United States right now, they have so many people pushing back from the environment. But when you have entities working together long before two sessions, then they can build this consensus. So what they have is the ship all rowing in the same direction. So when they do have this massive government gathering, it can move in a very simple function. It can move forward very easily, and that's something clearly that they want. And you and I talked about this before, the way the United States works as opposed to China. In the U.S., it's liberal democracy. You have these two political sides that are at each other's throats. They spend probably 60% of their time fundraising. I'm sure our good colleague Einer can talk more about that. But when you have members here who are teachers, who are professors, who are doctors, and do other things, they seem to kind of cut to the chase. Okay, let's find a way to build a consensus. Let's get this forward. And one thing that's great about this program, it's kind of detailing exactly how two sessions works and why it's important. And I really wish that people all around the world would have the chance to embrace this. Then I think they would have a better understanding of the way China sets its priorities and the way it moves toward that in kind of a collective fashion.
It's so important to see for yourself how China's political consultative conference works.
I mean, Einar, let's bring you into the discussion here. This political consultative infrastructure obviously has worked here for China. Is there something similar, a remote equivalent of a CPPCC member in the West, maybe? And what are the differences between them?
Well, yes, there are. I mean, there are advisors, there's think tanks, but there's nothing that's created and very formal like this. In the past, the House of Lords was kind of played this role. The Queen, in her own sense, in the British Empire, she has her meetings, but she can give advice, but she's really not trying to determine policy. So there is really nothing like this, because in the West, we do believe that conflict is the way to the truth, to finding good policies and things like that. And it's a cultural issue. In China, there are many disagreements. I've been in a number of these meetings, and you have people who are completely on different sides of the spectrum. The difference in the Chinese system is that they continue to talk until they get to this consensus. And it's not that everybody's happy or everybody's exactly on the same page, but they agree that this is the best way to go forward. So when you see the consultative meeting, it's not that everybody is in lockstep and thinking exactly along the same lines. What they realize is this is the best way forward for the whole country. And they're willing to put aside their personal views in order to make sure that the country can go onwards as a group.
We'll continue to talk until we make consensus. That's unique Chinese-style democracy. Now we're pleased to be joined by Joseph Olivier Mandu via Skype. He is the head of the African Youth Delegation in China. Welcome to our special program. So how do you perceive the democracy model adopted in Africa as a representative of African youth? How much can this group take part in Africa's politics?
Okay, thank you for having me. You have to know that modern Africa first formalized liberal democracy came with various legislatures left behind by the colonialists. And soon after African countries' independence, most nations actually underwent restructuring, but with still some prints of the colonial legacy, or with a triple heritage, if I'm to refer to one of the African greatest minds, Haile Masuri. So there's still much work to do in terms of democracy theory in African political scholarship, in terms of actually providing the underlying principles, meanings, and criteria of democracy in African culture, because several African scholars have actually in recent times seen the needs of utilization of Africa's democratic heritage and values rooted in its traditional past in resolving Africans' peculiar problems. And young Africans actually are gradually looking up to democracy with African characteristics, which is one that contributes to solving local contemporary social political problems, deciding current democratic experiences in Africa, of course, while being wary of internal and external forces that may work towards, vitiating its realization. So in the mindset of African youth, there are two main questions. Is democracy sustainable in Africa? Why has democracy not been, I would say, a sine qua non of development, which is linking a serious contention on the link between democracy and development? That's actually what the African youth are actually rooting for.
Joseph, political stability is the precondition for economic development. That's true for any country in any region. And unfortunately, in Africa, political instability at times has impeded and withheld economic development. Is there consensus in Africa on how to move forward with better political stability?
Well, first of all, I want to mention that there are also still narratives over the past, decades and few days that have painted a wide range of views of Africa in a quite pejorative way. But the truth is, we can see it as nuanced, because transformation, Africa is undergoing transformation, and also, a remarkable development. And Africa is actually on the path of shaping its own destiny, and should be, or is gradually referred to as the African opportunity instead of African of threat. But I agree with you that more progress is needed in terms of reducing conflict and thus refugees on the continent. But there is a sign of progress. So consensus, gradually, we can see some changes, but I will also want to come back to the young African leaders, because we know that the African youth is actually one of Africa's biggest natural resources. So they are not actually shying away from the challenges, from those challenges. So consensus at the political level, but among the youth, you know, they are building bridges with the diaspora, connecting the potential of Africa to the rest of the world and showing that Africa is not a threat, not a failure. Of course, we still have a lot to do, but Africa is an opportunity. And to actually come back to what you mentioned in general, the way ahead, the so-called consensus that you mentioned, could be actually read through the African Union Agenda 2063, which is moving towards the African we want, with such a spirit of finding African solution to African problems, with also a spirit of finding designing solutions for Africa and its development rooted in local conditions.
Well, as Joseph mentioned, well, different countries have different political systems. Well, different from the Western-style ballot politics. Well, they have no right, ordinary people have no right to oversight or supervise the government or the top legislative body after they cast their vote. But here in China, in the whole process of people's democracy, the ordinary people can take in not only the election, but also supervision and consultation.
I mean, this system of political consultation obviously has worked here for China. And as we often say, we should respect each country's own path as they see fit with their development here. And a lot of the bias comes from a lack of understanding, as highlighted by our panelists today. Exactly. And that is why we're increasing transparency as to the proceedings of the two sessions. We are inviting, Chinese policymakers and diplomats have often said, in the face of criticism, come to China, check for yourself, see for yourself, and that's exactly what we're doing with the proceedings of the two sessions. We have invited journalists from the world over to cover the two sessions, and they can see for themselves how the two sessions are carried out.
I want to get more perspectives from Dr. Xia. Well, Dr. Xia, what is your take on China's unique political system when it comes to exercising its own consultative conference? And as Joseph mentioned, a different story in Africa. How do you compare China's unique features with the rest of the countries?
Well, thank you for your question. Talking about the politics, different countries should have different political system, but at the same time, all the countries or all the human beings should respect some kind of a common value. That's what happened. That's what President Xi has mentioned in the in the report to the 20th National Congress of the CPC, and that's the common value of the human being, which include democracy and also freedom and other kind of values. But different countries should have their own way to realize democracy as a value. So if we understand the democracy, if we try to understand democracy, we should understand democracy at least through three levels or three kind of aspects. The first level, democracy as a value. Everyone should respect this. Everyone shouldn't or everyone couldn't just say no to the democracy as a common value, right? But the most important, or the more important, or as important as the value is that how to realize this common value. So the second level is democracy as an institution or democracy as a political mechanism, how to make it as a machine, how to make it run, how to make it fit the particular, different countries or different social and cultural background. And the third level is technical level. That is voting, that is election, that is different electoral system, voting even voting technique. For example, this week we have the proportional representation, right, in most of the countries, and we have also the single member district. These are technical. So we couldn't, misunderstand democracy as a technical level with the democracy as a common value and other kinds. So we should have a more comprehensive and a more composite understanding about politics. Well,
comprehensive understanding of different political system. Thank you, Dr. Xia, for your insights. Well, China's one country, two systems was introduced to implement the coexistence of different systems within one country. Here are the CPPCC members' views on it. Take a listen.
There should be further broadening and deepening of Hong Kong's financial connectivity with the Chinese mainland. A decade of connectivity has ensured its status as global financial hub. Since it's important and effective, there's need to figure out what can be broadened and what can be deepened.
In bringing, and not just bilaterally between these two SARs, but rather in the forum, going into the next phase of building out the whole GBA, I think this is the kind of spirit.
Fujian stands as a significant electricity exporting province in the southeastern region of our country, boasting abundant green and clean energy resources. If we can transmit Fujian's electricity to Taiwan, it would greatly enhance the power grid stability and improve the people's well-being there.
My proposal mainly includes two aspects. One is how to leverage Macau's role in connecting with the world and contribute to China's economic development process. The other is the advancements of the integration of Guangdong and Macau into a new stage of development, aiming to provide a better business environment.
I think we have reached this milestone on March 1st, but there are more steps that we need to take. This is a new and quite daring policy. It never happened to our country before. It gives energy to Macau. It's a new piece of area which we could diversify ourselves, which Macau badly needs.
Welcome back, and you're watching a special program on CPPCC 75 Years On. From its inception, the advisory body has been vital to the country's rejuvenation, unity, and development. It's an integral part of China's whole process, people's democracy.
What does the Chinese-style democracy entail, and where is the way ahead? Before we dive into the questions, let's take a look at some key milestones in CPPCC's history.
In September 1949, the first CPPCC plenary session was held in Beijing. It exercised the functions and power of the National People's Congress, which had not yet been established. The session proclaimed the founding of the PRC as the will of all Chinese people and adopted the common program of the CPPCC as a provisional constitution. It also decided on the capital city, national flag, and anthem, and elected the first government of the Republic. In September 1954, the first National People's Congress convened in Beijing. It passed the first constitution of the PRC, which transferred the legislative functions of the CPPCC to the National People's Congress. Later that year, the CPPCC charter was adopted at the body's annual meeting. It stated that the CPPCC would continue to serve as a united front organization. Since China's reform and opening up began in 1978, the CPPCC has ushered in a new stage of development. It has been supporting the cause of modernization and national reunification by deliberating on state affairs, making proposals, building consensus, and uniting compatriots outside the Chinese mainland. In 1982, for the first time, the nature and role of the CPPCC were included in the Constitution. 11 years later, it was written into the Constitution that the system of multi-party cooperation and political consultation under the Communist Party of China's leadership will continue and develop long into the future. 2019 marked the 70th anniversary of the CPPCC. During the Central Conference on CPPCC work, Chinese President Xi Jinping said the body fully demonstrates the feature and advantages of Chinese socialist democracy, which advocates broad consultation in decision-making and problem-solving. He called for the CPPCC to be upheld and for improvement of its work of political consultation and democratic oversight.
As we noted, the two sessions also provides a window on the ideas and practices of whole process people's democracy. The concept of whole process people's democracy was first proposed by Chinese President Xi Jinping during an inspection tour of Shanghai in 2019.
And President Xi has frequently emphasized the importance of this democracy. Let's come back with our discussions here, beginning with Dr. Jia. Dr. Jia, what would you say are the biggest features of this whole process people's democracy, and how does the CPPCC fit in that process?
Well, I think the whole process of democracy can be summarized as a combination of election democracy and consultation democracy. By election democracy, we're talking about taking votes on issues to make in the decision-making process. By consultation democracy, we mean consultation and supervision through consultation throughout the process of decision-making and decision implementation. The CPPCC's main function is on the consultation side. So basically, it offers a platform for people of different backgrounds, to exchange views and also come up with constructive ideas as to how to fix various kinds of policy problems. So it's a place where you gather all kinds of opinions, and also it's a body of policy consultation body or supervision body. It follows the decision-making process and also the implementation process. So through constant consultation and talking with people in charge of the certain policy issues, and to ensure that the policy making and decision, implementation process are the problems are fixed. So this is a lot of, and of course the members of the CPPCC are national committee and also various local committees. They also come up with proposals and ideas as to how to deal with various kinds of issues any time of the year.
Well, exactly as Dr. Jia mentioned, I want to get your perspective as a CPPCC member, Vivian. So how do you, as a CPPCC member, exercise your right to better facilitate China's whole process, people's democracy? Especially Xi Jinping has urged the CPPCC to carry forward its fine traditions, to be active in offering suggestions and building consensus. So how do you understand these fine traditions in the 75-year history of the CPPCC?
I think to draw strengths really from diversity, to view diversity as an advantage, not as a threat, to draw strength through consultation to form a consensus, to agree on our common goals and objectives, and also to do the detailed work and to use facts to tell the story and to offer balanced, constructive, and actionable advice for really the better lives of everybody, for our shared future. That's how I would understand those fine traditions.
And turning to Professor Xia Lu now. Professor Xia, we talked about how political foundation and political infrastructure serve as the foundation and prerequisite for economic development here. Can I get your take on what is the relationship between whole process democracy and China's high quality development?
Right, yeah. Thank you very much for the question. But I would like to just get back to the previous question about how to understand the real essence of the whole process people's democracy in China. We should first understand the real essence of the whole process people's democracy. Then we can pursue or further to the the relation between the politics and development. So in my opinion, actually, how should we understand election, right? How should we tackle the essence of election? In order to win election, you have to, as a candidate, you have to show the difference, the distinction between yourself and other candidacy, right? So that's the real essence of election. However, in China, well, we have 1.4 billion people. We have more than 30 provinces. Each of them could be larger than a kind of a European, mid-sized country and larger than the population. So we already have our variation. We have already had our differences. So the most important function about China's political system is to build a consensus on the basis of already existing variation and differences, and that is also related to the high quality development, because high quality development in China is not only the development of a particular some region. No, it is about the whole region, it is about the whole country, and it is about the whole population, particularly related to Chinese style, to modernization. The second characteristic or second feature of China's style modernization is the whole Chinese people, 1.4 billion and even larger in the future, to get into the modernization together or at the same time in the future. So that is the way to understand the Chinese politics and its contribution to high quality development.
Einar, this morning, as you and I listened to that speech delivered by Chairman Wang, he emphasized once again that China will strive for and contribute to Chinese path to modernization. Help us understand how that would happen in your eyes.
Well, innovation is the key. China has a very simple formula. What that is, to get on the front end, to develop IP, not only for itself, but in conjunction with other countries that wish to do it. And it's proceeding on that line. It is also trying to make sure that its production is as efficient as possible by embracing digital tools, etc. And it's growing its markets where they are welcome. So that's where you see ASEAN and the Global South becoming more prominent in China's field of markets and also field of resources. In terms of what we're talking about in high quality development, as I said, that's just innovation. But I want to make one comment, and that is the consultative represents the people's oversight. Government is a process. China has a process that allows the people to have oversight. Now, if you're wondering if it's effective, take this in mind. Look at the issues that were brought up by the consultative. They're mostly about the economy, education, social welfare. There's nothing in there about creating contentious issues or trying to polarize people. It was trying about bringing people together. It's a sharp contrast to places where all that seems to happen is people continue to fight and polarize each other and use fear to drive voters instead of hope. So, something to think about.
Well, let's get more perspective from Sean. Well, Sean, how do you understand China's whole process, people's democracy, under this global context, as you and I have been talking about, China's unique features in whole process democracy, that each laws and regulations have been put to the official website of the NPC for deliberation to solicit public opinion for at least twice before it's amended or adopted. In this way, ordinary people can get into the process of legislation. So that's why we call it whole process people's democracy. So how do you understand it as you're from the United States? How do you understand the features of China's whole process people's democracy?
Well, I think that's a great question, because I think a lot of people in the U.S., they hear that term and it just it's too many words, it boggles the mind. But if you sit there and listen to what you just said, it's spelled out very clearly, and that's what it is. Look, I'm all for fair comment and criticism, and I think everybody, whatever country he or she lives in, has the right to criticize anybody they want. But it should come from an educated standpoint. And that's what I would encourage people to learn about here. I mean, everything, if you talk about economics, you talk about policy, if you talk about cultural, this is something that China has done, reached out to all its people and allowed all its citizens to embrace this and have a word and an effort to have a say in the way things move forward. As we talked about the other day, this isn't something that just magically appears and is rubber stamped. It is vetted, it goes on and on. And that's one thing I don't think people outside of China have. To them, I think 2 sessions is a mystery. The way its global governance works is a mystery. And I think the more we talk about it, the more people have a chance to understand it on a very simple basis, that there is this effort to get people from all walks of life to have a say in this.
So whether people are shopping or you're staying at home, you can easily submit your suggestions when the legislature is amending a law or regulation. I want to get your perspective, Vivian. So as a CPPCC member, how do you view, the China's whole process, people's democracy? How does it work? And how would your work related to this whole process?
Yeah, I think building the consensus, the result is, the process is equally important than the consensus that's been built. So I think there's lots that we have talked about the process itself, how we do a lot of work to listen to the voice of the market, to listen to people from all walks of lives, to understand the pain point of some of the issues that they face, with a view that to try to offer more constructive suggestions, actionable advices for the government to consider when they form their policies. So everybody act in a very good intent and also with a lot of facts and tell the truth and then be very direct. And I think that really builds through that process an understanding of each other. Because sometimes we might not understand how the system actually works and what's the intent of the legislation that's behind it. So it's really I think, try to put all the stakeholders together to build that unity. And I think, and then at the end of the day, sometimes the issue may not be as it seems. And at the end of the day, people understand each other. You'll have a more common actions towards really a better result.
In this way, people will be the very master of the nation.
That's right.
And Professor Xiaolu, with the rise of digital technology and social media, how is China adapting its whole process democracy model to ensure as broad participation as possible and also feedback from its citizens?
Yes, thanks very much for the question. We know that Chinese political system or Chinese leadership is kind of proposing the people-oriented philosophy. People-oriented philosophy is not only a principle in socio-economic field, it's also a principle in political field. So in my opinion, people-oriented philosophy or people-oriented paradigm actually could be practiced or could be realized with the help, with the assistance of the further development of the digital, let's say, technology that could help the people, that could help the elite or the ruling elite to know what the people really thinking, what the real people in need. And also it could help the administration and also the policy making and also the policy implementation become more transparent. So in this way, we could argue that this digital technology is helping China and also is assisting China to really fulfill the principle of people-oriented philosophy. And also the people-oriented philosophy, well, is fitting this kind of 21st century, which is featured the digital technology.
Oh, last question. I would like to ask Dr. Jia. Well, doctor, in China's path to modernization and national rejuvenation, how do we evaluate CPPCC's role in reuniting people together?
Well, it has been playing a very important role in trying to bring people of different professions, different groups, different political orientations together, and to exchange views and also to try to develop some kind of consensus as to how to approach various issues in governance. So, but of course, it's a process of learning too for China. Nothing is perfect. For example, we need to balance how to strive for consensus, at the same time try to encourage people to speak up. So that's a perennial challenge for any kind of institution. And of course, China, in its effort to improve its governance, has also been trying to deal with such kind of challenges and issues throughout the time. I think with time passing, China can do a better job.
Dr. Jia, thank you so much. And Professor Xiaolu, I believe we have just enough time to end with you. A glorious history of 75 years since the founding of the CPPCC that has stayed committed to contribute to the national rejuvenation here in China. And if we hear the report delivered by Chairman Wang this morning, he said the advisory body will continue to contribute to building that China dream and the Chinese path to modernization. Help us envision the future, the next years to come with the CPPCC.
Yes, this is a very interesting question, and this is a very big question. In my opinion, like Mr. Tangen just mentioned, China now is in the process. It's in the process, not necessarily this is a kind of economic development process. In my opinion, this is also a process for a modern nation-state building, And this particular foundation for this modern nation-state building is the Chinese nationality. And this Chinese nationality should be built and should be consolidated with the help of the CPPCC as not only a consensus building platform, but also a united front, organization in order to consolidate, in order to, encourage, in order to, integrate as much as possible the positive energy into the future development of China. So not necessarily the social economic force, but also this political unity and also this Chinese nationality, which is the foundation for the rejuvenation of Chinese nation.
Beautiful conclusion and analysis. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, that's it for our special program marking the 75th anniversary of the CPPCC. On behalf of the team here in Beijing, thank you so much for joining us.
Our special thanks go to Dr. Jia Qingguo, member of the CPPCC Standing Committee and Professor of International Relations at Peking University. Of course, here in the studio, we also have Vivian Jian, CPPCC member and Deloitte China chair, our own Sean Caleb, CGTN America anchor, and part of our team following this year's two sessions.
Dr. Xia Lu, as well, Associate Professor at the School of Marxism Studies at Renmin University of China and Senior Fellow at Taihe Institute and Political and Economic Commentator Einar Tangen.
What a team. On behalf of the entire team here in Beijing, thank you so much. I'm Zhong Shi.
I'm Hona in Beijing. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned for more with CGTN.